"Officer, stop him! He's staring at me like a criminal!" The white woman's voice cut through the quiet afternoon, sharp and commanding. In an instant, the uniformed cop slammed his hand on the black man's shoulder, shoving him against the hood of a squad car. Metal bit into his skin, his dignity grinding under flashing lights. As the crowd began to gather, the woman smirked coldly and muttered, "That's what happens when you forget your place." Before we begin, please let me know in the comments where in the world you're watching this. I always check your replies. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because what you're about to witness is a story you'll never forget. The man's name was Marcus. A quiet strength radiated from him. He was tall, composed, and dressed sharply in a dark suit, the kind of man you could tell carried himself with pride. He had just stepped out of a coffee shop, briefcase in hand, when the accusation came. No crime committed, no law broken, just the simple, cruel weight of someone else's word. The officer didn't hesitate. Training, bias, or blind instinct, it didn't matter. His hand pushed harder, breath hot in Marcus's ear as he barked, "Don't move! Don't even breathe!" The humiliation of being pinned in broad daylight wasn't new to Marcus. He'd seen this story play out before, maybe not on his skin, but on the lives of countless black men who looked like him. The murmurs of bystanders rose like a tide. Some whispered nervously, unsure if they should intervene. Others raised their phones, recording every moment, their lenses capturing injustice in real time. Marcus's jaw tightened, not from fear, but from a lifetime of endurance. Because behind his silence lay a truth no one expected. As the officer pressed him down, Marcus's mind drifted back to his father's lessons. His father, a man of discipline and quiet fire, had once told him, "Son, they'll test you. They'll try to break you with their eyes, their words, their power, but you, never let them see you fold." And so, Marcus stood, humiliated. Yes, but unbroken. The white woman clutched her pearls theatrically, feeding the scene with venom. "He looked at me," she repeated louder, her voice laced with false tremors, as though glancing were a crime punishable by force. People shifted, uncomfortably, sensing the imbalance but afraid to challenge it. That's how these moments lived and died, in silence. But this moment would not end the way she imagined. What the officer didn't know, what the woman didn't know, was that Marcus wasn't just another black man to push against a car. He wasn't someone powerless, begging to be let go. He was their superior, the very man who oversaw the police department they represented. But Marcus stayed quiet. Not yet. Timing was everything. The officer's grip tightened. "You fit the description," he muttered, though there had been no description, no crime, just a gaze turned into an accusation. Marcus inhaled deeply, his pride intact even as his body bore the weight of casual cruelty. He knew these 10 seconds would change everything. The cameras kept rolling. Every eye was fixed on him, waiting for a reaction. Would he lash out? Would he resist? Marcus did neither. He waited, with the patience of someone who understood that. True power is revealed not in anger, but in the calm that follows humiliation. The woman sneered. "He thinks he belongs here, dressed like that. But we know better, don't we, officer?" Her words weren't just for Marcus. They were for the crowd, for the centuries of stereotypes she carried like a weapon. Words meant to cut deeper than the officer's grip. Marcus turned his head, slowly, his voice steady, low, and deliberate. "Are you sure?" he asked the officer. "You want to finish this?" The officer froze, confusion flickering across his face. The crowd stirred, sensing something shift. The moment stretched like a taut string, seconds dragging as if time itself knew it was standing on the edge of revelation. The woman scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, please, he's bluffing." But Marcus wasn't bluffing. He had spent his career building a reputation of fairness, of commanding respect, even from those who doubted him. He had walked through doors that were never meant to open for men like him, and he had earned the keys to every single one. The officer's radio crackled faintly. A voice from dispatch called his name. And then, the inevitable happened. Another officer, jogging from across the street, recognized Marcus instantly. His eyes widened, his voice breaking through the tension. "Chief? Chief Daniels?" The world stopped. The cop's hand fell away as though burned. His posture snapped back, rigid with terror. The crowd gasped, realization rippling through them. The man they had just seen pinned, humiliated, and accused of nothing wasn't a suspect. He was the one in charge. The white woman's face drained of color. For the first time, she looked small, exposed. Her power, which moments earlier filled the air like smoke, evaporated under the weight of truth. Marcus straightened his suit, calm and deliberate. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to threaten. His silence was louder than their cruelty. He glanced at the officer, his eyes sharp, unflinching. "You've made a mistake," he said, voice steady, carrying the weight of every injustice that had come before this one. The officer stammered, words collapsing in his throat. "Chief, I didn't know—" Marcus raised a hand, stopping him. "That's the problem," he replied. His tone wasn't angry, but cold, resolute. "You never stopped to know." The cameras caught every syllable. The white woman shrank back, clutching her purse as if it could shield her from accountability. The smirk that once carved her lips was gone, replaced by trembling uncertainty. But Marcus didn't even glance her way. She had played her part, and now the stage belonged to him. In that moment, Marcus wasn't just a man. He was a mirror, forcing everyone watching, both in the crowd and through their screens, to confront the raw truth of prejudice. A truth that no badge, no accusation, no insult could bury. But Marcus knew this wasn't over. What happened next would determine whether this was just another story buried under headlines, or whether it would be a lesson burned into history. He took a step forward, his presence commanding silence, the officer shrinking before him. And then, with all eyes upon him, Marcus prepared to make a decision that would change more than just his own life. The crowd held its breath. Phones stayed raised, recording history in real time. For Marcus, this was more than a personal humiliation. It was a reckoning, not just for himself, but for every black man who had been stopped, searched, and accused for no reason other than the color of their skin. The officer shifted uneasily, sweat beading at his temple. The weight of his mistake was written across his face. Behind him, the white woman's voice quivered now, no longer the sharp dagger it had been minutes earlier. I didn't mean... It was just... Her excuses stumbled, brittle as glass. But Marcus didn't turn his head. He had no interest in excuses. The silence was his stage. Then, in a voice that cut through the tension like a blade, Marcus said, "Officer, you're done here." The words were measured, final, echoing with authority. His tone wasn't raised, but it carried a thunder that no shouting could achieve. The bystanders exchanged glances, murmuring, realizing they were witnessing not just a confrontation, but a reversal. The officer stammered, "Chief, please, I didn't realize—" Marcus stepped closer, his presence commanding, eyes locking, on the man who had pressed him against cold metal just seconds ago. "That's the point," Marcus said. "You didn't care to realize. You didn't care to ask. You saw my skin, heard her words, and decided I was guilty. That makes you dangerous. And in this department, there is no place for dangerous—" The crowd gasped. Some cheered softly as though afraid to break the moment's gravity. The officer lowered his gaze, his hand trembling by his holster. For a man trained to hold power, he now looked powerless. And then Marcus turned to the cameras. Not directly, but enough so the world watching would understand. This is what happens every day. To men who don't wear this badge, to boys who never get a chance to speak. Today it happened to me. But tomorrow, who will it be? His voice was steady, his words searing. The second officer, the one who had recognized him, swallowed hard. "Chief, what should we do?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "Escort him back to headquarters. Effective immediately, he's relieved of duty." The officer's mouth fell open, stunned. The weight of the crowd pressed in. Judgment, accountability, exposure. The power he thought he held had dissolved in less than 10 seconds. As the officer was led away, the white woman's false confidence was completely shattered. She clutched at her purse like a lifeline. "Chief, Look, I was just nervous." You know how things are these days. I didn't mean for this to— Marcus finally turned to her, his eyes unwavering. You screamed for protection when none was needed. You used fear as a weapon, knowing it would be believed. You wanted me humiliated. And for what? A look? She opened her mouth, but no sound came. He didn't wait for an answer. His gaze cut through her performance, through her excuses, leaving nothing but silence. The crowd applauded softly now, not out of joy, but out of relief. Relief that, for once, the ending was different. Marcus walked away, his stride steady, the cameras following him like shadows. Inside, his heart pounded, not with rage, but with resolve. This wasn't about punishing one officer. It was about dismantling the silent permission that allowed moments like this to keep happening. Hours later, the footage was everywhere. Headlines screamed across screens. Police chief detained by his own officer after false accusation. The video went viral, shared, debated, dissected. Some called it justice, others a warning, but no one could ignore it. In the city hall, officials scrambled. Reporters demanded statements. The mayor called Marcus personally. Chief Daniels, this is unprecedented. What's your next step? Marcus's reply was calm. We don't sweep it under the rug. We confront it head on. This city deserves transparency, and my officers deserve accountability. If they can treat me this way, imagine what they do to those without power. The mayor was silent for a long moment before agreeing. That week, Marcus held a press conference. The room was packed, flashes from cameras cutting through the air. He stood at the podium, shoulders squared, eyes resolute. Behind him, a banner of the police department fluttered, a symbol now tied to both disgrace and the possibility of redemption. This department, Marcus began, his voice strong, exists to serve and protect. But service without respect is abuse. Protection without fairness is oppression. What happened to me on that street corner is the same thing that happens every day to countless black men and women. The difference is, this time, it was caught on camera. This time, the man pinned down was the one wearing the title of chief. A murmur spread through the crowd of reporters. Marcus raised a hand, silencing it. The officer involved has been terminated. Effective immediately, we are instituting mandatory bias and accountability training for every single member of this department. But let me be clear, this is not enough. This is only the beginning. The words hit like a storm. Some clapped, others whispered, but all eyes stayed on him. He had turned humiliation into leadership, injustice into change. In the days that followed, the community rallied. Letters poured in, messages of support from strangers across the country. Parents wrote, saying they felt seen. Young men wrote, saying they felt hope. Even critics, those who doubted reform, had to admit Marcus had forced a conversation no one could ignore. And yet, Marcus knew this was not a victory. It was a battle in a war that had stretched across centuries. Prejudice does not crumble in a day, nor does dignity erase scars so easily. But every battle won mattered. Every truth spoken mattered. And Marcus had chosen to turn his own humiliation into a weapon, not of revenge, but of justice. One evening, long after the cameras were gone, Marcus sat in his office, the city lights glowing outside his window. He thought of his father's words, of the lessons that had carried him through storms. He whispered, almost to himself, "They tried to break me today, but instead, they broke the silence." And that was enough. For the people watching the video from across the world, Marcus's story was more than an isolated incident. It was a reminder that courage can rise from humiliation, that dignity can shine even under the weight of prejudice, and that justice, though delayed, can still find its voice. Because in those 10 seconds, when a false accusation threatened to strip a man of his humanity, Marcus had chosen to stand, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been told to know their place. And in doing so, he redefined what power truly looks like.